Yeah, honestly, I just give up at this point.
It's also a former Tampa Bay Ray, so I have that soft spot.
We talked earlier about emotional moves.
Oh yeah.
Okay, look, LeBron Smith was probably an emotional deal, but I also got my CCP when I make him an 80-80. Oh, I'm talking about it. I'm saying when I make my CCP an 80 out of 80, I'll come out of that trade feeling much better than I do right now.
And folks, in case you don't know, this is the podcast. We decided just to go with no intro. We just jump.
Honestly, I'm fine with that. This is honestly fine. I do think.
Where do I start it though?
I do think sometimes that like the structured broadcast is really nice, but I do think people prefer the laid back, just talking shows.
We haven't played squad right now.
More. I think when we're just freestyling like this, I think it really comes across extremely.
I think we're just a better. Oh,
bye, Jared.
Bye, JR.
Or not.
I think he wants structure.
Yeah,
I think he wants structure. He's over. No structure. He's out.
Candy called. He'll be back in 5 minutes.
Are we doing an intro?
Worked really good this year, though.
If you want to do an intro, I don't have any mental capacity.
I don't really think we need to talk about anything specific. I think that's just bullshit about things that happen in the league for like an hour.
Yeah, Aiden, you can introduce us to
really
that.
Happened, has it?
All right, you ready? Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen,
Broncos country, let's ride.
Let's ride. It's back, baby. Let's ride. Football's back. Oh wait, we're talking about the wrong sport.
Well, football is back.
You know what? It is back. It is back, baby. You know what? Baker Mayfield, quarterback of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He absolutely loved to see it. Yikes. Yeah.
My condolences. I've been through that.
Thank you.
Pass downfield, and it's intercepted. That's his third in the first half.
No. It's not an interception. It was blocked at the line again.
No. Oh, and there's a deep ball to Mike Evans. That's about 15 yards short of where it's supposed to be.
There's a reason you live at the stadium.
And that's a deep drive to left field by Nick Castellanos.
Wait, what?
Oh, what's the meme about,
Castellanos. Castellanos. And there's a deep drive to left field by Castellanos. I don't know if I'll ever put on this headset again. Jeez. But no, welcome to the broadcast buddies. Sit here and pardon my French, but bullshit about random shit that happened in the file. But you know what? We're here to do it. And I think we've sort of adopted this more laid-back approach because it's more us just having a conversation, you guys getting to listen into our most inner thoughts. The mascot's joining us. We've got Brenden in the mascot. We've got Tim. We've got JR. And we've got Andrew back again with us. Thank you, Denver, last time for holding down the fort. And gentlemen, nothing's really happened in the file. So this has been a great recording. This has been a great recording. Good night. Should we? I hate to say this as an AL East GM and as a baseball fan, but I think it's safe to say the Evil Empire may be back. The Evil Empire of New York may be back.
They are. Sorry, none of us are focused on what we're actually talking about.
No, I see the chat. Like, I see it. I'm trying not to laugh.
I wasn't looking at it until you said
Too late.
Can't unsee that, bro.
And for those of you who can't see it, it's just what the five of us are like. It's a spreadsheet.
We were sharing hymnals in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, the Evil Empire is back. It was really nice not having to worry about the Yankees for several years because we knew that their GM didn't give a fuck. But now that they actually have someone behind the wheel who's trying and who cares about the league even a little bit, and I know Josh cares about it a lot. It's gonna be interesting seeing what the league is like with an actually competitive Yankees team.
I mean,
well, I think it's going to be.
Yeah, I did just dunk on Pete right there. I don't give a fuck. Leave that in here. He actively.
Yeah, I already know I'm not going to be putting any Tara Bunnies anymore.
He said multiple times in the general chat that he didn't understand why any of us cared so much about this. So good riddance.
Well, and I think it gives the league an automatic player anytime there's a big free agent out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think this trade kind of shows that he's willing to throw the cash around and shake things up a bit. So
Which I
yeah,
love.
that's
So
gonna be
How
something
long
to
until
reckon
he
with.
runs out of it though? Because he's used quite a bit this offseason.
You know what? It's
Their
New
budget
York.
was
You never
down
run
because
out.
they weren't good. Once this team starts competing again, that budget's going to go.
If
Oh yeah, because he was like averaging what 31K a game in attendance, and that's
Attendance, he was
not going to
down to
stay the
like
same.
no. I think attendance. He said that he was averaging just under 30,000 a season for the past 2 seasons, and then he said he's expecting to get close to 40 this year because
Oh, yeah.
not only has he
That was it.
signed guys for big money and brought in guys on big money, but he's also made sure they have decent fan interest, which in New York you need because the New York media will eat you alive. Now, question: we're looking at this Oakland trade, which we'll get into in a minute on the specifics of whether we like it or not. But of the guys named David Dahl and Joey Gallo, are either of those two going to be on the big league roster opening day?
I think they both have to be. Well, maybe not Gallo, but I think Dahl has to be because even if you enact that the new rule that we put in place last season, where you can take all of the contract and eat it all at once, I don't think he has even the money to do that. He might, but that would be a lot of money to eat at once and would severely cripple him from making any other moves during the season that might make him a contender at a trade deadline.
Keep in mind, a part of the rule that people don't discuss, you have to have had the player on the roster for the entire previous season in order to do that rule.
So he can't do that this year.
Well,
no,
and he's
like-
only
like-
on the hook for 17 million of that money.
With his outfield, I would not be surprised for him to carry Dahl as the 5th outfielder right now because he's only got 4 guys on the roster, I believe.
Yeah.
I bet you Gallo's on the chopping block right now.
Yeah, Gallo is an easy either. See if you can stick him on waivers if someone will take a chance on him because he does have that tantalizing power from the left side, but he just strikes out or gets out every time he doesn't hit a home run.
Yeah,
But-
but remember about Gallo, though. I mean, he's only a season removed from having over 3 WAR. I mean, it's not like we're talking about a player who's just been absolute trash for several years.
Yeah, he's not
So
bad
what I'm hearing
defensively
is
either.
future Cincinnati Red Joey Gallo.
You know,
I mean-
his power might play Great American. Just saying.
That's what I'm
It
saying.
might also play in the short left or right field porch of Yankee Stadium.
Well,
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
first
Real
thing
life
I
it
thought
didn't.
of.
In real life,
That's
it
the first. He's
That's what I was
a
about to say.
perfect. That's the perfect profile for a Yankee Stadium player. And that short left is gonna, I think, make some benefit. And Gallo is the type. He kind of changed my mind because I hated him when I first came into Arizona. And he draws walks. He's a great fielder. He hits plenty of bombs. And I learned to just not pay attention to how many times he struck out. So he's got value. I don't think he's dead money.
Think of this lineup real quick. I mean, you're thinking defensively wise, I'll say at least because we don't know how they're going to stack up. But you got to think, okay, you're going to have Jules Zana behind the plate, 22 years old last season, 278 hitter in 63 games, but he's going to put up some numbers for you. You're going to have Devers play first, Jackson Hedges play second base, who's young and up and coming last year in 33 games in New York, hit 308. Definitely a resurgence from him. You also can't forget you have Nicky Lopez there as well. Then at third base, you got Jose Ramirez, Kevin Milligan, who's not exactly the biggest power threat, but he plays a hell of a defense back there for New York. And then in the outfield, you got to think it's a mixture of Dahl, Early, and Green. I mean, that's what my thing says. And then, use Gallo in that DH role, or if you need to give Devers a day off here and there, play him at first base. He's still a serviceable first baseman defensively.
Honestly, Gallo might be a better defensive option than Devers.
Would you move Devers over to third and have Ramirez DH, or just have Devers?
No,
No,
Ramirez is still a good defender.
just have Devers DH.
What is nice is we did obviously mention the Yankees on the right track. They're not there yet, so we still got another year to enjoy it.
You don't
I
think
think
that will
that's
see well
right.
this season?
I look at their lineup and I say no.
Yeah.
I look at their
I
pitching
think
staff and I
They're
say
going
hell
to
no.
improve for sure.
They're gonna,
Yes. Yeah, they're not the easy out that they have been the last couple of years.
Their bullpen,
No.
I don't hate. It's their starting rotation that makes me sit here and go.
Oh, he was in on night until the end. He was going for pitching.
Yes.
So,
And what's going to happen next season when his budget cranks from 298 to 330? He's going to go in and just throw all of it at whoever he can get.
per the league rules, he's not going to be able to jump that high.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
God.
So this brings up.
Well,
a
plus
good
we don't know how
back.
revenue and
Well,
revenue
if we wanna
sharing
talk
plays
about-
into
missed
that,
him.
too.
If we want to talk about Ethan Knight for a second and his deal, if this sets a whole new precedence, in my opinion, for CCPs because of what he's going to be and how much he came up. You know what I mean? Like the fact that he has, I'm going to say not he has been completely different, but the fact of the matter is this sets a whole new precedence for CCP about, okay, what are we going to see in a big deal? Because we had the Andrew James deal, which was big, obviously, but then they tweaked the system a little bit, and now Ethan Knight is signed, and this sets up a whole new thing. But my question is, how many of these CCPs are actually going to reach free agency?
Not very many.
But how many teams are going to be? And I'm thinking of the Padres. How are they going to be able
Well,
to keep both Kims?
One of
And
them's already
Tatis.
locked up.
And but I mean, still,
So
at
Tatis.
some point,
Yeah.
it's going to be a numbers crunch for anybody who's not making high threes.
Well, why do you think the
As a team.
Padres listed Walker Buehler and Framil Reyes on the trade block? It's because they know they need to clear that money in order to sign the second Kim to that long-term deal. The first Kim already has the long-term deal. Tatis has a long-term deal. Those two are locked up. But they're trying to move Buehler and Reyes and those kind of contracts so they can sign the second Kim.
So what you're going to end up with is a lot of top tier players moving that in a normal out of the park league, everybody would have locked up by now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
And what
just
we've
not
actually
going to
seen
be
in our
that
league in the
flexibility
past.
financially to do that. Either that or the money's going to have to come way down, the expectation, and I don't see that happening. So
Now going back to New York for a second, looking at the ahead to what next year's free agents could be, the biggest pitcher on the market would be Cole Witt. I think the fact that Hedges, one thing we haven't talked about is, yes, they took on money and yes, they're becoming the evil empire, but they're building a farm system there too. Hedges has done a great job of rebuilding his farm system that I don't think he necessarily does it through free agent signing, but Hedges is going to use that money and go out and get a trade with some of these big guys he got, like Julio Rodriguez.
I do want to say, really, should we say that Hedges did a good job rebuilding his farm system? Because I'm more tempted to say that Oakland did a good job of rebuilding the Yankees farm system.
Yeah, I would say Oakland did a great job of panicking to try to get a bunch of money off their books for no good reason.
I want to put forward a different mentality that's not about the money. It's about a total roster reset and wanting to completely start from scratch.
If anyone on this
It's
call
two
has an
players.
experience on total roster reset, it's Brenden, as evidenced by last year.
just last week.
I mean, even think of me when I'll be honest. When I was in Atlanta, I sort of had to do a whole roster reset at one point. I had to shake out some of the old dead weight, and I had to bring in new guys. There's
Yeah,
Okay,
Oakland
there's a
had
difference
to
between-
and had to and did are two very different.
There's
Yeah.
also a difference between what you did and what Brenden did.
fair.
I mean,
But you know
I
what?
think
I
Oakland
don't. I'm
what
gonna say I
I
don't,
consider doing and pulled back. That's my take.
I don't think.
I was going to clean house and sell everybody out and all of that and have a fan interest of 12 and and just kind of deal with it. And I kept hesitating and I've kind of talked myself into how I'm approaching it. And I mean, it's like this. If you're going to finish 8th anyway, why spend all that money? Clear your decks. At least you can build it from scratch. And, let's say in a couple of years he moves on or maybe moves to another team in the league and somebody else comes in and take Oakland, we don't have to hear about Nicky Lopez anymore. We don't hear that Cal Murphy anymore. And it's an open field.
But in this deal in particular, though, if you're going to finish 8th anyway, why give away your prospects?
Yeah,
that's the hard thing that
there's nothing wrong with giving away prospects to clear salary space. Clear salary space. People do that all the time.
Don't bring up salary caps.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, that's my bad.
That's some commie talk right there.
Commie.
Stress
St.
eater.
Louis.
You mean like everyone having $34 ticket prices now?
Socialism
at its finest.
Yeah.
It's just
anyway,
woke mob setting our ticket prices.
Anyway, as I was saying, the question here is not the fact that they're offloading salary and attaching prospects to it. It's all of the prospect value that they offloaded onto this specific deal. I think they could have gotten away with just a little bit less the prospect capital. They probably could have made this deal work. I know it's a lot of money for Dahl, but was it worth this much? I don't mind for that.
He was only still on the hook for $17 million more for Dahl with what New York was retaining. I know it's for 5 more years, but it's not like, something crippling that he was going to go use elsewhere.
Yeah, which is why he was willing to accept it in the first place when I took Lopez.
As the proud owner of Kebron Hayes, I want to challenge that.
Flag on the play.
Yeah.
Why not?
That 17 hurts. When I'm sitting there looking at the fact that that's a free agent or maybe a free agent and a half that I could have doing something, and
maybe especially for Oakland.
But,
as well.
But also,
and Hayes is not going to play for me this year unless it's left.
But that's 17 and a half. That's 17 and a half for you, Tim. Could have re-signed you Tyler Glasnow, who I signed instead, plus some.
Okay,
yes.
but here's the thing though. He does this, but then he also gave 5 years, $40 million to a minor league free agent who's played 26 games above AA and hit 222 in those games. I mean, what are we doing here? We're giving away prospects to get money off the books while we're giving $40 million to a guy that's played 26 games above AA.
Do you think that, though, at the end of the day, do you think he should have split up those two guys between Dahl and Gallo, and he probably could have given away less?
I think I don't think it was necessary to split them up. I think he should have probably tried harder to not give up the top 2 prospects in his deal. I feel like he could have negotiated the price down a bit if he were to move both of them in the same deal.
I wonder what the market was for it. I wonder if he was getting any interest in either of those guys separately.
I'm willing to bet he did not shop them enough.
I think he shopped them around enough.
Insider info, I was talking to them about Gallo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, especially with Gallo, keep him going into the season. Maybe he starts off the year hitting well and you can move him. I mean, this is the end of preseason. It's not like he can go out and use this savings in free agency. I mean, we're almost to spring training. There's nobody out there hardly to go and sign.
No.
I mean, that's the other part of this that doesn't make any sense.
Who are the top free agents remaining right now? Just
Connor Thomas,
and Anderson. Those are out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's
don't forget Riley Pint
and Anderson. That's it. And Connor Thomas is still asking for almost $28 million.
Yeah, I mean,
is that what it says on the main screen or actually in the negotiations?
No, let's look real quick.
His contract demand is
26.7 over 5 years.
He wants 27.68 for me over 5.
For someone who was exclusively a reliever last year is trying to become a starter.
I'm seeing $29,040,000 over 5 years. But then, would you really want to come to Arizona?
What really gives me
now, no. Seeing as Phoenix is the first major American city to set a record, set of average temperature for a whole month of 100 degrees.
Yeah, they play indoors.
I can confirm Mrs. Machado was completely responsible for that.
To hang out with Tim Lowery, I'd do it.
Mrs. Machado really responsible for the climate crisis.
What really gives me heartburn about this trade for our league, just looking at it from our league perspective, is that there had to be contingencies built into it for the trade to go through. If there's a trade that's approved only under the guise of, hey, if the guy who made the deal leaves the next season, then we reverse some of the trade because it was so bad for the future of this other team.
Then LB shouldn't have accepted it. That decision was fully within his own.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
Control.
That's one of the reasons I look at this as a ugly deal for our league.
I didn't like that we had to flip over the table to actually find out what the contingencies were.
I don't like that there was no transparency behind it.
Yeah.
There was zero transparency behind it. And I don't understand why. Like, or why not? If you're so pressed about, like, if you feel like there are the need for these contingencies, if there's the need for these contingencies, why accept the deal? Why not go back like he's done to me before and say, hey, you need to rework this?
I mean, he did. This was the reworked version.
Yeah.
I know it was the reworked version because I know there was a version before that was even worse than this. But why not say, hey, look, I'm still not comfortable. Go rework it again. Why?
You'll have to ask him.
And you know what? I don't think we'll get an answer on it. No. I don't think we will.
Well, he's already said he's not going to speak publicly about it. We'll see. I imagine in a couple of years it will come up in a stream, but
I hate
it's just my gut feeling.
I hate being negative because Kamish has made a great league for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks all the time about wanting to be transparent. Why not be transparent on this situation? And I know there's quietness there, but I'm just speaking how it made me feel.
I'm choosing not to answer this because I don't want to say something that will not look very good. So I'm just gonna.
That sounds like a Fifth Amendment thing.
Yeah.
We've had economics and government all in one podcast.
And politics.
We've also had climate science, so I'm 4 for 4 here.
Are you one of those like First Amendment
and animal handling?
I see. Are you one of those First Amendment auditors I see on YouTube all the time or whatever, or TikTok or whatever? That's like, what's your name and badge number, sir? Or I'm traveling. I'm not driving. I'm traveling.
Yes,
God.
You're the police. I ain't got to tell you shit.
Wow, this podcast has gone way off the rails.
Yes, it has. Thank you, Aiden.
Yes. Wow, you're blaming it on me? What?
Oh, I'm blaming this particular detour on you. Yes.
Hey, you know what? Is it
not all of them?
We're traveling on a detour.
So who's done? Obviously, the Yankees have made the most noise. Who's in a better position than they were at the end of last season?
The Los Angeles Dodgers.
Every single team is going to want to say that.
Angels.
Most of them will. Oh, fuck yeah, the Angels. You know what? Okay, I've pounded the table for this for a very long time. I don't like how people approach this league and this game like a video game, wanting to try and game the system, try to cruise many prospects as possible, be as stingy as possible, dealing it out. Real life baseball teams don't operate like that. They do operate like that when they suck and they need to accrue talent. But when your window's open, generally speaking, you're fucking going for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tom seems to have finally realized that the reason he hasn't gotten over the hump is because he's been too stingy and he hasn't been willing to go for it. And he knows if he's going to keep up with Texas and Houston, he's got to go for it. And he went for it this offseason. And I love it.
I will say it took a lot of time to convince him to give up Allenson.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Like obviously you're gonna negotiate hard when it comes to a guy who's a legit future ace. But I feel like he was, however, he entertained the discussion. He would not have done that last year.
That's correct. He was open to it from the beginning. Like he didn't come to me, or when I asked for Allenson for Acuna when we started those talks, he didn't like immediately shut it down and say absolutely not. He did try to say, hey, do you want Clisby? Do you want other like some of the ones that went to you in the Maury trade? And I was like, if I'm moving Acuna, I want Allenson. Let's talk what we can do there. And eventually he decided it was worth it.
I was really surprised because when I was talking to him a little bit here and there about some different deals, especially after he made the trade with Brenden, he basically said that Allenson was as close to as untouchable as he would label anybody. So I was really surprised when you end up getting him.
I think that there are maybe 4 or 5 players who reasonably could have moved that Allenson could have been dealt for, and Acuna.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, I also had to attach my top pitching prospect at the time in Trueblood, who was number 36 overall. So it's not like it was just Acuna. And he's now locked up Acuna for 8 seasons. So, which I knew he was going to do, by the way.
Can I walk you? We'll ignore the bullpen for now. Starting lineup, pitching rotation. Pitching rotation right now: Briggs, Clisby, Frank, Jim, Ohtani. 1 through 5, best rotation in the league?
I would say 1 through 5, yes.
Okay. Now, lineup, okay? Catcher's a combination of Bailey and Hearn. That's honestly not a great position group, but Thornton.
Better than Maury now.
Moeller. Okay, Thornton at first. Mike Moeller at second. Nolan Arenado at third. Andrelton Simmons, the second best, most valuable defender last year in the entire league at short. Then Trout, Allen, Acuna in the outfield, and Shohei Ohtani DHing.
Whew.
It's not the best lineup in the league, but it's top 5.
But combine that with the top pitching rotation in the league. This is an early World Series favorite.
Yes, and I feel like I love seeing this because I've pounded the table, like to bring it all the way back around. I've pounded the table for people to be willing to go for it. Stop trying to treat it like it's offline out of the park. It's not offline out of the park. This league emulates real life baseball more because you're competing against other people, not a computer program you can manipulate. Go for it. Be willing to sacrifice, because winning does matter in this league. Not because you get anything for it, but it's really fucking nice to put the little World Series champs next to your name so all your friends know that you're better than them.
And to have Rocky Draws give you a banner for it.
Yeah.
Those are pretty sick banners, gotta say.
And it's going to be tough now that we've got back to 4 divisions as God intended.
Yes. Tim is after my heart right now.
It's going to be very tough. You're going to have to constantly keep moving because, like, each division currently has a top 4 that's all pretty close together, even though the 2 West divisions seem to have the bulk of talent. Certain teams notwithstanding. And it's just, you make a move one year, great, you finish second. And you're immediately back in 4th if you don't follow that up with something else. And I think it's going to be a constant churn going forward. You're going to have to do something spectacular every year just to be competitive.
And I think it's good for the small teams that's going to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot more talent outflow from the big teams to the small teams because the Cincinnati Reds have a star-hitting first baseman here in a couple of years, right? That the New York Yankees want to stay on top of the division, so they send them a big haul of prospects. The Yankees may win the World Series, but 3 years from then, all those prospects are now making up a core lineup for the Reds as they're gunning for the division. That's the scenario we're talking about here, and it's how real life baseball works. It's what I feel like this league was not trending towards until we started hitting this ratings inflation and the condensing into 2 divisions.
Yeah, I think condensing into 2 divisions also encouraged teams that could trade within division as well.
Yes.
Like I've actually had numerous conversations with teams in my own division, not even thinking about, like, I don't really care if you're in the same division as me. If we have something that's beneficial for both sides, let's work something out.
Yeah, because the wild cards come out of both divisions simultaneously, so you're really competing against your whole league anyway. So, what difference?
Tim, I'm sorry, I'm not going after Hayes.
Wait, but you just texted. Forget it.
All right, so none of us remember what we were talking about before we took a break.
Oh,
so
we were talking about the competitiveness in each division and how it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That's
Thank
right.
you,
Okay.
Tim.
Mine like a steel trap.
I have a photographic memory. I'm just out of film.
Yep. Okay, so where were we on that topic? Professionals, everybody.
Yeah.
We can pay the big bucks for this.
We're
basically making ourselves feel better that Houston can't possibly be in the World Series every year.
Well, we were talking about how stacked the Angels rotation
Yes.
was and how Tom, is going for it all. Speaking of going for it all, maybe we rewind a little bit to Toronto picking up Ed Brown to add him to that already potent young lineup.
So let's just list it. All right. Catcher, Adley Rutschman. First base, Gretzky. Second base, Carew. Third base, Ed Brown. Shortstop, Jordan Cage. 2 CCPs right there. Then Lyle and left.
Carew's a
Merriman
CCP
in
too.
center. Murray and right. And then any number one of Nate Lewis, Nate Lau, playing DH.
Yeah, Gretzky coming off a really good Rookie of the Year performance, had some MVP votes.
I don't understand them signing both Nate Lewis and Nate Lau.
I think he was hoping to sign one of them and seeing which one signed first, and then they both signed at the same time.
Probably.
That never happens.
I know. This is why it's so funny.
However,
It's like it's been fun having a bunch of minor league guys won't sign, and then suddenly there's a flurry in my email box, and it's like, oh crap, count them quick, 1, 2. Oh, true, thank God. I didn't break the sim rule.
Now, it's interesting coming off of this season where we saw Toronto, as everyone expected them to make progress but not quite be ready to compete, ended up near the top of that division. Will you say, based on this offseason, on the moves that they've made, talking about going for it, do you think they are now the favorites in the AL East?
Straight up. And for 2 reasons. Boston last year got incredibly lucky with their pitching. Incredibly lucky. And I don't think they're going to get as lucky again. And their offense got worse.
Have Boston made any offseason moves?
They can't. They don't have any money. Mookie Betts has started regressing. They lost Benintendi, which obviously Benintendi was not some super big bat, but he was a productive player in that lineup. Attrition is finally affecting that Boston lineup, and the pitching staff is still not very good. They got lucky last year. If you look at the numbers, it is bonkers just how lucky they got. I think Boston does the slip from first to fourth or maybe fifth this year.
I can see that.
Do you not think players like Bo Bichette or was it Pepe Clark, do you think they sustain the success that they had this year, or do they regress as well? Because both of them did markedly better than their prior year.
I think guys like Pepe Clark might regress a little bit back to the mean. He might hit exactly where it was. He was not overly, super spectacular last year. Bichette definitely regresses. That 361 BABIP versus his 304 career average is going to be
that's not sustainable.
No. However, the core of the lineup should be all solid again. It's just it used to be that the Boston lineup was almost 1 through 9 sluggers, and now we're getting to a point where you're looking at guys going, yeah, you're kind of vulnerable. Oh, there's definitely a hole at this position. It's affects every team. It atrophies, and I mean it. I really don't think this pitching staff is going to be good.
Yeah, and that was the thing with the pitching staff. There just wasn't a whole lot of room for margin for error if the offense didn't come through.
Well, I feel like, especially like you're talking about in the AL East, especially, so many teams have taken a step forward where Boston has stayed stagnant, if anything, or maybe even taken a small step back to the point where it's just going to be harder for them to compete. I mean, Toronto, like every year, has taken a step forward. Baltimore has taken a step forward. New York has taken a step forward. Even Tampa has taken a small step forward. I don't know fully what they're going to be, but they've definitely taken a step forward in some regard.
It's more of a lateral step.
You dealt
an ace and got an elite slugger.
I don't disagree.
Future it'll help you, but right now it's like
I don't disagree.
We'll see how the season goes.
Yeah.
I think what scares me the most in Boston, and I think this goes for the whole entire league in general, is Boston doesn't have that solid catcher that I feel like you have to have in this league to be successful.
One thing I will point out, though, this might be for Boston this year. One of the reasons why they might not be making moves is because they might be trying to just hold on for a season because they have quite a bit of money coming off the books next year. McCullers 20 mil done, Syndergaard 17 mil done, Mondesi 17 mil done, Bichette and Clark 10 mil done, although they're probably going to try to extend those two. But they've got a little bit of money coming off the books, so maybe they're just trying to hold on until they get some money to play with.
Reload. Yeah.
I think that AL East is kind of interesting too, though, because you have, I think we could all agree Toronto is the easy favorite to finish at the top. Now, whether they will or not, we just never know. But I think the easy favorite is Toronto at the top. The easy number 8 team is the White Sox.
Oh, yeah. They're
really,
in full rebuild right now.
Right. But those other 6 teams, I mean, you could really jumble around in a lot of different ways. And I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised where a lot of them ended up.
So what about
and nobody
Detroit
said
and Cleveland?
Nobody said Cleveland. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can take Baltimore, Boston, Tampa, New York, Cleveland, and Detroit and go, here, random dice roll. And no one would be shocked however those teams lined up.
Yeah, so that would be I would say the AL East is going to be the hardest division to predict this season. Not that we're any good at predicting anyway, but
well, I was getting ready to say I've been such a jinx. I picked 4 of the playoff teams last year, the whole year.
Which is why when Rocky Draws is drawing my championship banner, you will all eat your words. I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, and I will. I'm going to refrain to make any comments on Toronto because I want Ed to enjoy some of his life before the Yankees take over the world.
Is the AL East going to be a better division top to bottom than the NL West this year?
Can we hit
Yes.
the pause button on this conversation real quick? Should we just do predictions for the divisions? I feel like we're already kind of doing it.
No. Wait until we get to the spring
That's
training.
That's a separate episode. That's a separate episode.
Okay.
We'll have a full episode devoted to that.
Andrew's got 6 more trades to go. I mean, I don't even know what his team's going to look like by now.
I've got 4. I put 4 in today. Now, to be fair, 2 of the 4 trades were part 2s of originally earlier deals that were made, but we couldn't put the full trade through because of the Winter League roster restrictions. So, 2 new ones technically.
To be fair.
Who's gonna
I'm
be
rolling right into it.
let's go into our crystal ball then real quick. Who's gonna be the biggest buyer and who's gonna be the biggest seller at this year's trade deadline?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think
basically we're playing the game of who do we think is in a competitive spot right now and it's going to blow it up.
You talk about seller, right?
Yeah, buyer is going to be a little bit harder.
Honestly, I think Pittsburgh follows up their strategy of last year of buying big at the deadline to put their roster push because they lost Devers and McKnight.
Yeah, buying with what?
Ethan Knight.
No. Buying with what?
They've still got a pretty decent prospects.
They're running out.
They're running out, but they're not.
No. I think they're pretty darn close out.
I'm not saying they're going to be able to get players such as Devers and Knight. I'm saying that they're going to be big buyers because they need to, if they want to repeat, they need to fill the holes that those 2 players that they just lost left.
So I know that the top prospect list is basically worthless, but we're going to use it for just this example real quick.
All intents and purposes.
They have 12 top 500 prospects. Of those 12, Jorge Ayala is a 17-year-old international complex player. Steve Austin is going to be in the majors as their second baseman. J.R. Frankenstero is going to be in the majors as their third baseman. Chris Simon is an actually valuable piece, although he's more favorably rated as a bullpen arm. Will probably be in the majors as a bullpen arm. And Mario Murray, same deal as him, but he'll likely be in the majors as a bullpen arm. Outside of that, they don't have jack. They've got 2 maybe starters, probably better as bullpen arm players that are their prospects that could be dealt.
All right.
And a 17-year-old international complex guy who teams are going to be obviously pretty leery of because those guys can boom or bust and likely bust.
Or they look at Pittsburgh,
17-year-old in the fall.
or they look at Pittsburgh and see what they have with Bracamontes and hope this is the next coming of Bracamontes.
Yeah, sure. That's the 1-20.
Yeah, that's that lightning doesn't strike enough.
I don't.
But teams might think it does.
True, but
that's true because we can all delude ourselves into thinking that the guy we're going to get is the man, right?
I just don't think that Pittsburgh has the capital to be big buyers. Big buyer, by the way. If we're talking about teams that do have prospect capital now, maybe the Yankees.
That's true. They could flip some of the guys they've just got. Yeah. That's if they're in a position to compete.
Well, if let's game plan this. It's a week after the All-Star break, and you are 2 or 3 games above 500 in the wild card hunt because that's probably like the best case scenario for the Yankees going into the year. You absolutely start buying at that point.
Yeah,
I think it's either Cleveland or Tampa.
I don't hate that.
Because that division is going to be, with that being a wide open division, somebody's going to try to make a move to give themselves a nice little boost.
It's going to be a wide open division after Toronto.
I mean, but here's the thing: Toronto's lineup is absolutely terrifying. Their pitching staff is less so.
Now they do have pitching waiting in the wings. Like you look at Tanner Houck might be ready for the majors really soon, and he's one of the top pitching prospects. So he might make an appearance.
They'll have a couple good to quality arms, supplemented by less good guys.
Ed's got a decent infield arm, and he could do mop up duty. So
position player pitching.
Here's the biggest seller, and I think it's going to come from that AL East. I'm going to go with Detroit. I don't know if Detroit can continue the same success they had last year.
I mean, they have a new GM now, so.
They have a new GM. And so he might want to build it as his team.
Yeah. I can see him giving the first half of the season as a wait-and-see approach and seeing how they do. And if it's clearly trending downwards, him blowing it up and selling it for spare parts.
Yeah, that's possible. We've talked a lot about AL teams, though. We've really only talked about one NL team in Pittsburgh as a buyer.
League, so.
Sure.
Better than what?
I think a buyer at the deadline in the NL will be the Atlanta Braves.
I actually see them as a possible seller.
I hear you, and I go. I say almost my Pittsburgh with what?
Padres.
I mean, they have two. Outside of CCPs, they've got 2 corner outfielders who they could deal, which could be packaged for something, but that doesn't make them the big.
I think Gorgalicious Booty Womper will be on the move because you got Kenny Lindbergh there to take over first base instead.
I mean, or you could have first base DH combo.
Yeah.
Or Kenny develops his own guy to play a corner spot.
I think Steve is determined. I think the window is Padres are at peak window. They've only got a couple more years. I think they've got to do something now. Yeah.
And Steve, again, top prospect lists don't mean everything, but the Padres do have 5 top 100 prospects right now.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Cubbies?
Cubs don't have.
They've got some good prospects.
Not much.
They have 2.
The Cubs are interesting because this offseason they've been quiet compared to the last offseason because they got pitching that they needed. There's really not.
I don't say there's much for them to do.
They already have a solid roster. What?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing you would do is you would have to. This might be a combination of prospects and major league talent. Would go out and get an ace type. Because they already have a really good lineup that they don't really have to do much to improve upon. They have a solid pitching staff, but they have it's like one of those things they're all good across the board, but no one's at ace level. Maybe they package a hitter and one of those good pitchers to get back an ace or something along those lines. That's the only thing I can see them doing. So I don't really see them as heavy buyers in that regard.
I could see them getting potentially another outfielder as well. I mean, you've got Danny Smith, obviously, and Jackie Roberts, but center field is kind of a question mark for them.
Danny Smith plays center field.
He's listed as a right fielder right now. Ignore that.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
the
So
I
they
would
need a
know
right
about it.
fielder because they really don't have one of those.
Yeah, I signed the right fielder from last year.
Yeah, that was a pretty big contract you gave Robles.
3 years. I know it's 4 years, but the third year is a team option I'm going to avoid.
I've been meaning to talk about this ever since I saw this signing. Can we talk about the fact that they signed Will Smith when they already had Carson Kelly?
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Like Carson Kelly's been really good for them. Like he gave Kelly an extension. I don't think one of them DHs. I don't think they're like hitter enough to be a full-time DH. So that
I mean, Will Smith is a much better hitter, and they're equivalent defensively.
Will Smith hit
But they're the
below
same
league
age.
average last year.
Yeah.
It was
it's
a lot
not
of
like one
money
of
to
them is
throw at a
coming up.
backup catcher.
Yeah.
Either one of them.
Yeah, I was about to say, whoever is the backup catcher, it's a lot to be paying them. Although, to be fair, Houston did the same thing when they traded for Real Muto. So you got two teams now that are paying a lot of money for a backup catcher.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between trading for a guy in the only year of a deal because the qualifying offer and signing a guy to a multi-year commitment.
That's true. And then putting the other catcher on the trade block as a result.
I would not be shocked if before the season starts if Carson Kelly is traded.
Which is bizarre because arguably Kelly's the better catcher than Smith, based on the numbers the past couple seasons.
And if he gets traded, to who?
Yeah,
because of the CCPs in this league, there are very few teams that are going to be aggressively buying catchers.
That's true.
True.
I would argue that it's the most oversaturated position for CCPs.
I'm just looking through the teams right now to see who need. Maybe the Dodgers go in and get him.
The Dodgers are going all in on a defensive catcher with Melendez. Like you saw, they overpaid for Melendez to add him because I think they are valuing the defense at the catcher position and don't care about like. I'm pretty sure they were going to move Laron Smith to first base and get a defensive catcher if they didn't move Laron. And so I don't think they care about getting someone like Kelly or Smith.
I think Boston would be a good landing spot for Carson Kelly.
Could be. Except Boston doesn't have any money to add him right now.
And Boston doesn't trade.
We talked about
Boston
the Angels struggling with the catcher's
Angels
position.
Angels could. That is a good possibility.
They saved a crap ton of money with Morey off the books.
Yeah.
I mean, not fully, but
I mean they used that money to re-sign Acuna recently. So
would you rather spend $15 million on a player or $45 million on a player? It's clear. You'll take the 15 or 60. I mean, you'd take the 15 and have the rest of the 45 gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like that? I hate to ask this question because I feel like you get asked all the time, but I'm still going to ask it anyway. Do you feel like the oversaturation in the league makes it worse for the league? The fact that, the oversaturation of players, like you were talking about, the oversaturation of catchers or anything like that, makes this league not as better off.
The catcher position is different because a CCP center field, like outfielders, right? Like maybe you make a whole bunch of CCP center fielders, and then like the real life players move to the corners, and that's fine. There's places for them to go. Same thing for the infield, same thing for pitchers. Catchers is the only position that's got a real problem with oversaturation. That's because you only have two on a roster and one starting, and there's their backup.
I don't you can move the catcher to first base.
You know what I mean? Like typically speaking, they're not hitting well enough.
Yeah, but
if you're talking about a typical average catcher in Major League Baseball, they're not the best hitters.
Right. Well, that's not what they're there to do. And
real life Austin Hedges, we're looking at you.
Well, see, that's the thing. People get all worked up about somebody like an Austin Hedges who maybe hits his weight, maybe doesn't, but is not there for that.
He's the best. He is one of the better defenders in the league. And the fact that he can mentor the younger guys.
Right. And I think because there isn't a stat, and I'm sorry to say, defensive stats are questionable at best, and especially with catchers. you can't quantify the value that they give. The catcher ERA is about as close as you can get, and that's got a ton of holes in it. To me,
Your frame rate in DRS is
you're
not good for a
going
catcher.
by. Well, I mean, it tells you a bit of a story. It's just like batting average, and all the other stats with a hitter.
But
Some of it is looking at a guy.
As a former catcher, you cannot quantify in a stat. How does that catcher call the game? How does that catcher manage his pitching staff? How does he do, especially in a case like Hedges in real life, where he's teaching the two young catchers in the future of the Pirates and Rodriguez and Davis how to play the position? You cannot quantify that, because I can tell you right now that, especially, at the high school level, I was able to go out and I knew my pitcher well enough to go out and say, hey, this is what you need right now. Or I knew how to call the game, or I could go calm my pitcher down when something's happening. But another catcher couldn't do it the same way I could. You cannot quantify that into a stat.
No.
And I'm gonna make JR roll his eyes at me for a minute. That's why Yadier Molina is gonna be a future Hall of Famer.
I'll do that for you.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find people who don't believe Yadier Molina is a future Hall of Famer.
He's one of them.
I believe people believe he is a future Hall of Famer. I just don't. But that's just me.
Is Buster Posey a future Hall of Famer?
No, I should change. He's definitely a future Hall of Famer. I just don't think he should be.
I mean, look at what happened to the Cardinals pitching this season. It's atrocious.
Well, that's because you have a terrible defensive catcher in Wilson Contreras.
Yeah. That's my point. Anyway,
and it's not
I was defending,
and like, and it's like Charlie O'Brien used to be for Greg Maddux. He was the caddy for him. McCarver was the caddy for Carlton.
But it's in a lot of cases though, it's really about just like a safe space for the pitcher. It's about
what makes them comfortable.
But
what's the value of that?
Look at when John Lester went to Chicago. Look at when John Lester went to Chicago, when he had David Ross as his catcher versus anybody else. The stats speak for themselves. The fact that he was so much better with Ross, because it's that security blanket. It's Ross knew how to call the game. It's Ross knew how to call a game for Lester. Ross knew how to calm down Lester when he needed it, when he got into a tough situation.
Yeah, and the catcher that wasn't catching was Contreras, as we talked about earlier.
Those are kind of outside the realm of like your actual talent as a baseball player, though. I mean, we're talking about John Lester, a guy who got into the yips where he couldn't throw to first base. So we're talking about a guy that's a little, edgy.
That's the point. It's outside the realm of talent in baseball, but there is value on the field to things that are not related to what you do on the field.
And a lot of times we don't. It's like we can't quantify it. There's no metric for it, so we really don't understand it.
And that's like, the point. Is there's a lot of things about the catcher position that we can't put on a stat sheet.
Right. Yet,
that's true.
I think the advanced analytics and the AWS stuff.
Let's play a would you rather game. You ready? Would you rather have a
Marco
catcher?
Robbie.
Amen. Would you rather have a catcher who hits, let's say, 260,
Leafy Princess,
20 home runs, 260? Jesus Christ, man! Let me finish. Would you rather have a catcher that catches?
That's tough, but I'd take Leafy over Jesus. I'm sorry.
Would you rather have a catcher that hits 260 with 20 home runs, or a catcher who hits 200 with 10 home runs, but also has a catcher ERA of 3, where the other guy has a catcher ERA of 5?
Depends on what the rest of my offense is doing.
And what's the durability of the catcher? How much am I paying these guys? What's his durability?
There's a lot of different factors that can go into this. It's really situational.
But the core of your argument, would you rather have a superior defensive catcher versus a superior offensive one, superior defensive one every single time?
I would agree.
It depends.
And if you can get a catcher that is defensive that hits for league average, and I'm not talking catcher average, I'm talking league average. That's the key. It doesn't need to be
a superior
average.
Defensive catcher helps the pitching staff.
And as a Cardinals fan, I wanted the Cardinals to trade for Sean Murphy from the beginning. I did not want them to sign Contreras. So
totally get it.
Especially after seeing what the Braves gave up for him. and how he's doing this year,
He's been in and out tonight.
It'll be interesting to
Braves
see.
collapse in the second half, by the way. I read the script.
Can I get a copy?
Are we talking real life? Real life based
Yeah.
Braves?
Yeah.
All right. I'm down with that.
I
Yeah,
knew
because that
you'd
gives
do my
your
corner.
Reds a better chance, right?
Although we beat everybody that's not named the Brewers.
Reds get swept in division series after winning wildcard series.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Just
That
call-
means they
I'm-
made the playoffs.
I'm going off the
Playoff
script.
tickets, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Orioles win World Series. I have bought. I
Tigers
bought
finished
on.
fourth in the West.
I bought into the Baltimore Orioles hype train before the season started, and as they've gone up and down, like I'm like vibrating over here. I'm not an Orioles fan in real life. I'm a Mariners fan because I hate myself. But the Baltimore Orioles, I don't know. I love seeing a team that finally puts all the pieces together.
I would love
the Orioles need pitching, and if they're going to win the World Series, I'm just saying that. And pitching has already been drying up because a lot of guys have already been traded.
I would love to see a O's and Reds World Series matchup with all the young players on both of those teams.
Oh, that's a throwback right there. What was it? 69?
70.
Nice.
70.
I was pretty darn close. I'm pretty proud of myself.
The
there.
beginnings of the Big Red Machine and the Orioles.
Back when you guys,
The 69
were alive, right?
Orioles, even though they lost to the Mets, probably one of the better teams of all time,
Yeah.
top to bottom.
All right. Aiden said he's got to run, so he's not coming back. So
Okay.
we can keep going.
I figured we were still.
All right, so
going.
Tampa's last.
I figured that one was a side conversation because we were talking about IRL and not eMLB.
I think people pay to hear what we say.
Pay?
Exactly. They don't pay.
We ain't getting paid.
Exactly.
They pay with their time.
Fair.
They pay attention, goddammit.
Yeah. They waste good brain cells on this information. I'm ready.
So as we wrap up this podcast, we're going to go around and talk through what we think are our, well, we won't say best and worst. We'll say what are our favorite free agent signings and what are our least favorite free agent signings. So I'll go ahead and start because I've already mentioned my least favorite, and that was the Cubs signing Will Smith, because it just doesn't make sense to me. It just, like, you already have a really good pitcher who put up over a 3 WAR for you last year. Why invest that money in another catcher? And either if you have like a platoon in mind or splitting time with them, one's going to end up being the backup to the other. I feel like that money could have been better used elsewhere. But I guess with the Cubs budget, it's not that big of a deal. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it'd be interesting to see how he uses both of those catchers into this season, because I already thought they had the catcher position solidified with Carson Kelly back there. So we'll see what happens with that. That's what I think is my least favorite signing.
What was your favorite?
You have to come back to me on that one. I want someone else to talk about something because I don't really know what my favorite is yet.
Well, since I just spoke, I'll just go ahead and give my least favorite. It's Austin Meadows to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, come on.
I know that it's only a 3-year guaranteed deal with declining money, so that's all right.
Yeah,
I feel like Austin Meadows is declining and is going to fall off the cliff this year, not next year. I don't like what I've seen I don't like the regression I've seen in his numbers. I don't like the way that he's regressed. And I feel like his skill set is one of a player who's going to dramatically underperform because he's hit the age where performance starts to dip for players like him. Don't think he's going to be a massive misstep because of the declining value of the contract, but I also think that he's going to be a little bit of a Kelnick where you get him and you're hoping that he'll plug in, and he's going to be a pretty big disappointment.
I mean, I'm just going to point out the fact that he has not hit under league average his entire career.
Okay,
So-
that's really nice. That's really cool. He's heading into his age 33 season.
Yeah.
And his performance has regressed each of the last 2 years for the previous one.
Okay. We'll see what happens. My fans liked it.
He's walking less and striking out more and hitting fewer home runs.
Okay. He was also in a different environment in Chicago. We'll see what he does when he has some protection in the lineup and isn't the main person.
Holy shit, are we really going to bring up lineup protection?
Yes,
that's
we
not
are.
real, right? You know that's not real. It's a complete and total myth. It is made up bullshit.
Pressure is not on him to perform.
Oh god. when your best defense is a made up thing. Oh boy.
It's not made up.
Lineup protection is totally not real.
Mm.
There is it is the saber. That right there might be the sabermetrician's real darling, is proving lineup protection does not exist.
Okay, have they proved it?
Yes.
All right, show it to me later.
Conclusively.
They've proven that lineups themselves aren't as a big a deal as you might think.
Over the course of a season, a lineup will gain you an extra 8 to 15 runs.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I did not sign Austin Meadows just for his offensive production, though. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So my least favorite was the Rafi Devers move. Devers is a good player, and he's going to fit in well in the Yankees. It's the length of time. They're going to be paying him almost $40 million until he himself is 40 or 38 or 39. And as much as I love Miguel Cabrera, that's what the last 5 years that the Tigers have had Miguel, that's what the Yankees are going to have the last 5 years of that deal. Somebody who you're like, Jesus Christ, we're paying this guy? And those are hard to deal. Those contracts are.
And you gave that contract to a player who's coming off a 1-point-something WAR season.
Right.
Like he had a down year.
Yeah.
He had a down year in Seattle. He then went to Pittsburgh and was his old self.
Yeah. I think the next 2-3 years he earns that money. It's just the back half of that contract is going to be cement shoes. It's going to be a hard thing to deal with.
I agree. It's going to suck at the back end, but you see teams sign these kind of deals in real life because it's good right now, and that's really what matters. Ultimately, if Rafael Devers is a key contributor to a World Series winning team, you're not going to care too much if he's dead weight for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, flags fly forever. I totally get it. So,
but if he crashes and burns right away, he will never hear the end of this.
Also true.
All right, JR, what's your least favorite?
There's, I love Jay Hill, and I think he does a really good job with the Brew Crew. I wasn't really crazy about a couple of the signings he had with the Yadier Alvarez and Francisco Mejia. Mejia mainly because of the compensation attached to him. And then, Alvarez, I mean, he's basically going to be slotted in as kind of a setup guy, and, giving him 3 years and about $15 or so million each year just seems like a lot for a guy like him. I mean, I know he can have some value there in a relief role, but that just seems, like a real high overpaid to me, trying to get a relief arm in there.
I feel like you're planning to use him as a starter if you're paying him that money.
Agreed.
Yeah.
He's got the
I
stamina.
kind of wonder about that too.
But does he have the pitch mix to do it? That's the question. By the way, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, the way that he's kind of got him slotted right now, it looks like he's got him in a relief role, but maybe that changes through spring training.
Yeah, I don't really put any stock in where players are positioned before spring training rosters are even open, because people are moving things around, experimenting here or there. Opening day, we'll get a true sense of how they're going to be used. So I don't really put stock in, like we saw earlier, Danny Smith Jr. is listed as the right fielder. We all know he's going to play center. So
that's actually
he could play both at once. Actually,
it's true. He probably
with his range, he was worth what, 23 zone rating, 23.5 zone rating last year. He might as well be the right fielder and center fielder.
Yeah, he could have had Austin Hedges bat, and he would have still been above.
So according to OSA, Yadier Alvarez has a 17-17 fastball and slider and a 12-12 curveball with a 4-4 changeup. You have 3+ pitches with 14 stamina. He's listed as a borderline starter in game, which does have a strikeout penalty, although I sometimes argue that it may not be as bad as you worry it's going to be. I think he can start. Maybe not be an elite starter, but he can start.
So I'm going to throw in another name because I know I kind of repeated myself when talking about Will Smith. I'm going to say that I'm not a huge fan of the Chapman deal to Kansas City. And it's not because of the deal itself. Like the money and the years, those make sense absolutely. It's just not the right team. Like you had your Kansas City, you're a rebuilding team. You had to give up a draft pick for this signing. And this type of signing with that draft pick compensation tied to it from the qualifying offer, this is a signing that should have been made for a team that is on the cusp of competing and going for playoffs, World Series. This is not the type of signing that you make if you're a rebuilding team, because draft picks should be treated as gold if you're a rebuilding team. Now, I understand that it improves his team. Like Chapman is a really good player and it will definitely improve the Royals roster. But this is the move you make when you're ready to compete for the playoffs, not still in the midst of a rebuild.
Yeah, I'm torn on it because I can see where Minerva's head is at on it, and I can see, wanting to kind of, bring in this guy that can be, a stalwart in your lineup, can add fan interest, can be, it's not a long range deal. It's only a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
But, I'm like you, to me, this is the kind of move, if in real life, if you think back to when the Reds traded for Scott Rollins, when they had a team that had a bunch of guys at the AAA level that were ready and in their first year in the majors and ready to kind of go on a run. And you could bring in a guy like Rollins who was going to man a certain position, provide some of that leadership and everything, and still be a competent player for a couple more years as those guys started to win. And I just don't see this team being anywhere near that at this point.
I really don't think this is going to happen, the scenario I'm about to describe. But you can kind of squint at the Royals roster, especially post St. Louis trade. You can kind of squint and see a team that maybe goes on another magic run and makes the playoffs again. It's not likely. I don't think this roster right now is not built to be the worst team in the league, like a lot of rebuilding teams are. This team is built to win anywhere from 71 to 79 games. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a really good chance they do that. They've done a decent job of it. Regardless of overall roster philosophy, this is what their goal is, so I'm going to evaluate it based on that. They've done a good job of acquiring solid, if unspectacular, starting pitching, especially with multiple guys coming over from St. Louis. Matt Chapman now provides a elite defensive player and solid hitter at the corner. They already have their own CCP out in center field. You figure Bernazard's going to recover from a garbage season. Parker recovered from his garbage season last year and was pretty solid last year. There's a couple decent other bats. P.D. Halpin. It's not a great roster all around. It's not one I expect to make the playoffs. It's one I expected to finish more closer to 71 than the 79. But you can kind of squint at it and see a situation where they win 84 win, where they have 84 wins and are like barely squeaking into the playoffs if everything broke right. I just think maybe is what Minerva wants.
I just think Chapman was maybe a year or two early for where Kansas City is at in their rebuild. Yes. Like I said, the contract and the player that you're getting, I don't argue with it. Like, it's a good player for a good contract. It's not, he didn't overpay. He didn't it's not like a crazy $40 million contract. Like, it's reasonable money for Chapman, but it's a player on the back end of his career. You're still maybe a year or two away from competing for a playoff spot. I just think the timing was a little off in the signing.
That's why I said I wasn't going to talk about philosophy. I was just going to evaluate it based off of what he did because he obviously made up his mind.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like, I mean, you want to talk about saturated positions for CCPs. Third base is it, to me.
Catcher, third, and center.
Right. So to get somebody like a Chapman, solves that one position for him, he can build another CCP or get somebody else's or Bella. Can we have a Ringo star George Harrison comp, please? Ringo Harrison. It could happen. So
one of the consequences, though, was that then he had a logjam in the infield, and I mean, he ended up trading me Juan Alzagray, not anybody that's a spectacular player, but still a young, third baseman who, you could have given another chance to play another year or so to kind of see if he's the real deal or not.
And he gave up a draft pick. I think if it didn't come with that loss of a draft pick, I wouldn't be as critical of this deal. But because he's got to send that draft pick compensation back, it makes this deal a little bit harder to swallow because you're still in that rebuilding phase, and you should be treating. It's a third round pick.
You lose your third. It turns into something else depending on the kind of deal and who
it's probably going to be a first round for Houston based on.
I don't know what the formula is to convert it.
Oh, great!
You lose your third.
Yeah, and again, in our drafts, a third round pick is really valuable.
Very valuable. Yeah,
I think if Chapman did not have that draft pick assigned, I wouldn't have any real criticism for the move. I just think because you're losing that draft pick, it makes it harder to swallow.
Yeah.
All right, now we got to go through best signings or your favorite signings. And I'm still trying to figure mine out.
I can go first since I went last on the other if you want.
Go for it. Perfect. Reverse the order. Yep.
Yeah. So, obviously one of the big signings that happened was the Ethan Knight signing with the Phillies. And, we've talked about that a lot. But the one of the signings that Philly made that I really did like a lot was Brusdar Graterol, picking him up. Again, he comes in at a pretty decent salary. I mean, he's going to be making a little under $15 million this year, 2029, 11 and a half basically. And then 2 team options after that for 11 and a half that, the team is going to have control over to see if he pitches like he, should be able to continue. He's a ground ball guy, good fit for that ballpark. I think he would have had a lot better numbers last year if, the Twins would have used him properly and actually let him start the entire season instead of putting him in the bullpen. So he's a guy that I think still can contribute a lot as a member of a rotation. And, frankly, somebody that I tried to target really early on in free agency to see if I could, sneak sign him. But, Hebrew, I thought did a really great job picking him up.
Yeah.
He's good. My favorite is staying in the NL East, the Matoshi Suzuki for Pittsburgh.
I almost picked that as the one I didn't like.
I know. I was. Go ahead. Tim. Go ahead.
I'm curious to see if the Bracamontes and other magic that Cody has managed to pull off in the past works with this guy. It's $10 million a year for 6 years. If it's a bust, it's a bust. Write it off and walk away. Plus, the last 2 years, he's got team options for that $10 million. Nice shot in the dark for somebody that, and he's got something to play with here because he won the title last year. So, he's got some flexibility there.
Yeah, but for a team that keeps talking about how they don't have as much money as the top teams in the league, that's kind of a lot of money to throw at someone who's unproven.
Yeah, to me it's kind of like the deal that Oakland gave to I think it was Ganzel. These are moves that I just think are bad for the league, that you're just throwing this money at somebody who may or may not even really be ready to play in the majors at this point. You're gonna be making $10 million.
Well, to that I say, cough cough, Evan White. The Mariners gave him like an 8-year deal when he was still an A-ball, and he completely failed it. But it's the same kind of idea for you give him the guaranteed money, so while he's developing, banking on him developing into a star player that you're going to have at an affordable price in 2 or 3 years.
I just think if he's what are we saying? 9 million, 10 million a year for WAR now? I mean, per WAR.
If it hits great.
Yeah. And if it doesn't hit, trash it, start over. But my little personal prediction, he doesn't play the full 6 in Pittsburgh. He's dealt.
Oh, yeah.
At some point before that.
Knowing Cody, probably. He'll have
Flip that value while you have it.
Absolutely.
He'll have a CCP to take over in left field or something.
Yeah.
So I guess it's my turn. My favorite signing is also one that makes me incredibly angry. It's Fraser Perez to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Why does that make you angry, Brenden?
I'll tell you in a second. Fraser Perez is an extremely good pitcher for what he is. He's not an ace. He'll never be an ace, but you don't really need to. I think everyone always overhypes needing to get that guy. The Padres have proven time and time again in our league that you just need a staff of good arms. Now, the Dodgers do have an ace in Chip Giesler, but that's besides the point. They have a really good rotation. And Fraser Perez joins that, striking out last year 33.4% of hitters faced. The year before that, he was at 30%. The year before that, 28.9%. So you know he's going to be a high strikeout guy. His walks were way down below where they are in his career. That should regress upwards. His BABIP was right about in career average. So he's not going to be the 3.35 ERA guy, but he's going to be the above average pitcher that joins a really good rotation and at a fairly affordable clip, especially, even the Dodgers have a ton of money, but $22 million a year ish is pretty good for a guy who's going to be a great arm for you. And on the topic of 22 mil or 23 mil, this dude somehow managed to get Fraser Perez to sign with him for $23 million less total value than I offered. 5 years, $116 to the Dodgers, or 5-year, $139 that the Orioles offered you. Take the Dodgers deal. I'm not salty about that at all.
No, not at all.
Hey, I wasn't getting that. I wasn't getting that vibe at all.
I guess Chris's voodoo magic that everyone talks about really does exist, and it applies to free agents.
I believe it, and I also tend to try to ignore it.
Yeah.
It's okay. When he doesn't make the playoffs, I'll just make fun of him.
Yeah. Well, I have more to do with the fact that my team is bad than he does. So, and when I figure this game out finally in 2080, real life years, not season years, I don't want to push myself. Then I'll change my mind.
All right. I narrowed down my choice, and Brenden, I'll help you feel a little bit better because it's one of your signings. Because it was someone I was targeting as well. But I offered way less. It wasn't a situation where he signed for less money. Victor Robles to the Orioles. I like Robles a lot. It's been interesting watching him the past 2 seasons go through free agency and really just get 1-year deals the past 2 seasons because everyone feels like he's asking too much. In this league, elite center field defense with at least around league average offense is a very valuable commodity. And it's been surprising to me that he's lasted this long the past 2 years. And I think adding him at the contract that you did where you front loaded the first year and have declining value. Once we talked about that with the Meadows deal, and you have absolutely no intention of signing him to that team option at the end. That was definitely just to raise the value of the contract.
Yep.
It is still underneath the rules of the team option.
Under the collective bargaining agreement of eMLB. That's
legal. Right. It is still a legal contract, but we all know you have no intention of exercising that team option. But so we'll just look at the 3 years that you do have him for, which is 27.5 with a player opt out. So he could go straight back to free agency for the 3rd straight year. No, I guess that would be the 4th straight year at this point. Then 24-3 and 21-2. If he gets all 3, I think that's a fairly reasonable amount for one of the elite defensive outfielders in the game with someone with the potential to put up league average numbers. So I think that's a pretty good signing. I offered way less, seeing if I could see, because at that point, no one had offered him anything, according to what I could see. So I tried to undercut it.
I've been waiting for him to sign since basically the end of November.
Oh, really? Well,
I've just been he wouldn't sign. He was always going, I want the not no trade. I want to be promised a starting role. Okay, fine. I'm planning on starting in center field anyways. I want 6 years. No, you're getting 3. I want 5 years. You're getting 3. I want 4 years. I'm like, fine. If you get 4 years with the team option at the end, will you just fucking sign? Let me think about it. It was pending for like 3 straight sims.
I think actually
he signed that the sim that I offered him a deal. So maybe he was like, he looked at my deals like, oh, if that's the deal I'm going to get from other places, I'm going to go ahead and sign over here.
There are 2 positions in my time with the Orioles, which is now going into my 5th season, that have been headaches the entire time, and that's center field and second base. I solved the second base issue kind of by just shunting my shortstop to second and getting a new shortstop. But center field has always been a problem. I've had subpar center field defense every year that I've been in this league. I'm tired of it.
There you go.
I will be interested to see how he does, just because, I mean, his defensive, stats have been trending a little downward in center field the last few years. Last year he played pretty much exclusively right field with the Cubs with Danny Smith, but so I'll be interested to see if those numbers kind of bounce back a little bit there in center.
I figure if he is barely above average, that's better than what I've had.
That's fair. All right.
I have trotted out some bad center fielders in my time.
That's fair. All right. Are we going to do in Aiden's honor? We're going to do a little hot seat.
Why the fuck not?
I guess I'm on the hot seat first.
You are on the hot seat first.
That's where the program put me.
Hot man in the hot seat.
Hey, my wife thinks so. So
it's the beard. Hey, that's all that matters.
That's the only person I care about thinking that way.
I'm a little hurt, but okay.
That's 2 podcasts in a row you've been bricked, Brenden.
It is. I'm just gonna keep trying with all of y'all. That's how I find love.
Never give up, Brenden.
God.
I didn't even drink tonight. This is just me being a little bit tired.
And now you're gonna start.
All right, what question you got for me?
There you go.
Pass it on over.
All right. So I'm sure that we all have our own personal bet on this, but I'm going to go ahead and open the floor up to you to also levy a personal bet on this.
Okay.
Over under, how many games does it take for the Cardinals GM to start complaining, ugh, I don't understand why my offense isn't working when they were so good last year? How many games?
A month. A month into the season.
A month into the season? Okay.
Wait a minute.
I don't get out of the park.
I don't. I really don't.
Follow-up question. Are you on the opening day streams? Are you playing in any of the opening day streams? Because that's when it hits.
I'm not currently. I'm probably going to be focusing on my own project for the Streamathon, so I probably won't be. I'll probably be focusing more on that than OOTP. So
shameless plug. I'm looking forward to that.
I'll give a little inside hint as to what I'm doing. It involves eMLB, and it involves Super Mega Baseball 4.
Nice.
So you could probably figure out what's going on there.
So Tim got his. Tim, do you want to ask another question?
Yes, I do. You've been seeing, like, 2 years ago, the hitting struggled. Last year, the pitching struggled.
Yep.
You made some significant moves to move people out and to bring other people in with the pitching. How much patience are you going to have with your pitching before you start wheeling and dealing?
I think I will run a typical, like, trade deadline moves if I need to, like late June, early July, because I still have a couple of young pitchers that are going to be at AAA that I could see making an impact in the majors if any one of my rotation struggles. I tried to build up the depth so that if pitchers struggle like they did last year, I could replace them with others. I didn't have as much depth last year as I wanted. Now, to be fair, I am sending one of my depth pieces to Kansas City in that trade, so that was a bummer. But I also have a lot more bullpen depth this year as well. So my first thing is going to give the young guys a start. Like I have I have a CCP Austin Bentley Jr. in AAA. He's on the cusp. He's going to be in spring training. He might compete for a roster spot if he wows the crowd there. So hopefully I won't have to I admit I overcorrected this offseason with trading for pitching. I hope I don't have to overcorrect again at the trade deadline. I hope this time it's maybe one or two pitchers that aren't performing as well as opposed to over half my pitching staff like last year.
Totally. Yeah. JR.
Let's see. You've talked we've talked about a lot of deals, and you mentioned some guys that you looked into or that you were after. Who would you say is your biggest fish that got away, whether it was trade you explored or a free agent you went after?
I got the biggest fish that I went after, and that was Allenson. So I was happy about that. But I was trying, and the Ed Brown deal screwed this up. I was trying to get Tanner Houck from the Blue Jays, but at wisely, Toronto was like, pitching is valuable. I don't want to move Houck, and I found a better deal where I added in Ed Brown based on the deal that we were talking at the time, which I'm not going to give any inside info on that one. But basically, once the Ed Brown deal went down, there was no chance I was going to get Houck.
Houck was actually kind of the sticking point when I was trading Barrios last year.
Oh.
He was the piece that Toronto wouldn't give up, that maybe go with Jamie's deal.
Yeah, I think Houck's going to turn into a really good starter. It on the cusp of ace second pitcher potential.
And honestly, with getting Jamie CCP, you're probably okay with
right
how that panned out.
Yeah, I was trying to be a little greedy just to see if I could pull it off.
All right, Brenden, you're up. Oh, I guess I got to ask the question first, or we're gonna.
I didn't think I was going to ask my own questions.
All right, Brenden, you have been really out of any of us, you have definitely changed your roster the most over the past season and a half. Compare your roster now to where it was at the beginning of last season. Do you think you are take injuries out of it, like the Buster Bluth injury? Don't consider that. Just based on the pure rosters, do you think your roster is better this year or last year?
Significantly better.
This year?
Yes. I was very top heavy, and I knew I was very top heavy last year, and I was banking on top heavy carrying the rest of the roster. And while that's not a failing strategy, we've seen that work before in this league. It didn't work, and when it doesn't work, you're kind of left to hang out to dry. And I've never been someone who's going to sit with something that doesn't work. I cut my losses. That's what I did with the trade deadline. I said, this isn't working. It's obviously not working. I'm going to start the reset now. And through a lot of wheeling and dealing, I do feel like I've built a significantly more competitive roster heading into this year than I had last year.
Well, having Dan Walker 80-80 now definitely helps.
And that was without the last round of boosts going in yet. Yeah. And I do mean last round, because I'm pretty sure I'm done boosting him. But Snell had a resurgent campaign, exactly as I was hoping he would. Jorge Soto is finally, development-wise, turning into the top-level pitcher that I expected him to be. Getting Jerry Rivera is a coup for me. Adrian Morejon has got plenty left in the tank as a swingman fifth starter. I feel like my bullpen has several extremely high-performing pieces in it. Not necessarily even talking about offense. I don't think I'm a favorite, but I do like my roster.
I was waiting for you to finish with your classic. And here's some other players I have less to say about.
I love doing that. I'm
I
glad
love
someone
that.
notices it.
I love that in your list. So, as the official trade weasel of eMLB, trademark,
Yeah, TM.
what's the one trade that didn't? How do I say this? What's the guy that you were? Because I don't want you to tip any hands. What's the one guy you were going to deal that it was like, oh, thank God that didn't happen, and you were able to keep him?
I'm going to give the less juicy answer, but it's going to be plenty juicy.
Okay.
It's just less recent.
Okay.
At the beginning of 2025, when I started off 3-16, that was the year I had the best record in the league and went to the World Series. Go me.
Remember that.
But I started off 3-16, and I was in full. I was coming off an 83-79 season, so my perspective at the time was, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. I'm probably not nearly as good as I thought I was going to be. I'm probably a middling team at best. And I was looking at Buster Bluth heading into the final year of his deal, and I was like, oh, maybe what I should do is I should take this superstar and deal him for a big haul. And so I was exploring multiple trade packages, including with Andrew over there, and I had pen to paper a deal with Aiden to send him to Atlanta at the beginning of a few games into the 2025 season. And I said, you know what? I'm going to sit on it for a couple sims. And my team took off, and I went, nah, I'm not going to do that. But it was seriously like agreed upon, set. And I just said, hold on, let's let it sit for a minute.
Wow. Thank you. That was, I can't imagine what the more juicy.
I was about to say that was the less juicy one.
Yeah, that's wow.
Here, Jared, your question. Ask what the more juicy one was.
I think I might know what the more juicy one was.
You do know what the more juicy one was.
Yeah, okay. So speaking of superstar trades, we kind of speculated way early on, who might be buyers and sellers of the trade deadline. Who do you think is going to be the biggest superstar traded at the trade deadline?
Ooh. Who's got expiring contracts?
It's not always about expiring contracts, though. That's the thing.
Not always, but that's like where I want to start.
That's a nice place to start digging, right?
Yep.
So you've got to the boring answer is Aaron Judge. That's the boring answer, because I can see a pretty easy scenario where the Indians are not super competitive and he's in the last year of his deal, and so he ships them off for profit. That's fine. That's a boring answer. I don't like that answer. I think that if Seattle underperforms again, maybe they drink the Kool-Aid and Eric Kelly's gone in a colossal deal. He's on team-friendly deal with team options for the next couple years, and so he could very easily hold on to him, and he would not be. But I think when you look at the relative situations, most of the time you don't want to say, like, I'm not going to trade my elite player because there's no way I get enough value back for him. Most of the time, and that's true. However, in the AL West, where it's a clear 1, 2, 3 top pecking order in the division, and you are solidly outside of those top 3, if you are unable to crack into it this year, you might say, who can offer me a elite team to build around for this one guy?
And also, he's at 9 years of service time. So at the end of this season, he'd have his 10-5 rights.
So now's what's going to happen. And I feel like all of Commission's CCPs are going to be on the move at some point, and he's the last one.
Well, he'll go to Philly.
Unlikely. Philly doesn't. Maybe when he's a free agent, but right now, no. But I can see like
Maybe that's why Billy's not spending money.
Maybe. Well, I mean, and sorry, JR, but maybe Jordan Cage gets flipped for him. Ed Brown moves to the outfield to fix the outfield problems, and you have a better defensive shortstop.
Jordan wouldn't mind going to Seattle.
No, that actually would probably make both. Like, obviously, we're like, this is like fan trades, like you read on MLB.com, where like there's just completely batshit deals that are never going to happen. But like on the surface, that actually kind of makes sense for both parties. So
it's like a game day MLB post in Instagram.
Yeah. So as trade weasel trademark, that is my juicy estimation. That probably won't happen, but I kind of hope does.
Nice. Oh shit.
Yes.
I was hoping they were going to forget me.
Nope. All right, Tim, my question for you.
I'm a stress eater.
All right, how long into the season until you finally trade Kim to the Padres?
He could use a second baseman.
They could.
That he could.
No, I'll. You want me to do a more serious question?
Well, I'll answer that one too. But I'm hesitant to deal Kim, although it would make good sense, simply because, again, I don't want to crater my fan interest any lower than it already is. But I think I'm going to have to get over that at some point. So,
okay. So,
in case you haven't noticed, I hesitate to make any deal.
Yeah. So, legitimate question.
Right.
Do you have a prospect / rookie in your system that you are looking forward to making basically give me who you think on your team would be the best rookie of the year candidate?
Ooh. Freddie Nelson. 25-year-old outfielder. He had a cup of coffee, and it was a good cup of coffee. It was dark roast last year. Now that Corbin Carroll has kind of solidified center field, I'm a little more willing to experiment with Nelson at one of the corner things. And there's going to be, I think I'm just going to go full on into a small ball type lineup, and Nelson fits that along with Combs and Lush. So Freddie Nelson, rookie.
His actions do speak louder than his words.
Is that his player profile?
It is his profile.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as trade weasel trademark, I like that you added the trademark. I'm going to use that now every time. As the trade weasel trademark, has a deal been discussed with Minnesota yet to either send Aaron Cross or Elric to the Twins?
No.
There has been no discussions. That is interesting.
That has not happened. And at the same time, I totally get with them being her CCPs, I would entertain such an offer.
It'd be the only team that you said actually like would be open to everyone else you've shut down.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
send on me. I'll negotiate for you.
Trademark. His services are available for hire.
I would hate to give up Elric because he looks like he's kind of made a bit of a jump. He went to the start of last year. He was up and down, more down than up. Seems to have leveled off and is starting to pitch more economically. Towards the end of last year, he was getting into the 6th and 7th inning on his pitch count, as opposed to earlier in the year when it was pretty solid 5 innings, 5 1/3, and then getting pulled. So I'm happy with his progress.
I don't want to steal all the thunder from JR, but I actually do have a follow-up question. would you accept a hypothetical Ramon Jackson and Xavier Odom for Elric?
Ooh.
How about this? I figure you're going to need additional parts. Let's call it Courtney Odom Jackson for Cross and Elric.
I need additional parts. I need a Napa store.
Napa know-how.
Yeah. Or Ed Vance could be the mascot for Arizona. That would be an interesting haul for him. Courtney is problematic, although I could get over it. That would be a very interesting trade.
Cool.
Fair. So
my
Mike,
services are $500K.
So
I got to watch a few more streams first. Okay.
Hey, be happy he's not asking for a prospect.
So my question would be, of the 5 regular broadcast buddies insiders, how many make the playoffs in 2028?
Ooh.
Well, it won't be 5.
Yeah, you're right. Tampa's definitely not getting in. They're an easy scratch.
Oh, no.
3.
He's not going to say who.
And that's Arizona coming in to win the West, baby.
D-backs.
We'll steal a few games. If we hit 500 this year, I'm throwing myself a parade. May throw myself a parade anyway. Who knows?
I feel like that's justified.
Yeah. No, 3. And I don't know who the odd one out would be, honestly. I want to say 4, but that's too much pressure on y'all. So firing squad logic works. One of you's off the hook.
All right. I got to think of a question for you. Of the National League teams that made the playoffs this past year, replace 2 of them with teams that you think missed the playoffs last year that will make it this year. So we're talking.
Don't worry, I'm going to get the list of teams.
You're pulling it up right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't remember who all made it.
That's what I said. Don't worry, I'm getting it.
Padres, Cubs, Cardinals, Pirates, Braves, Phillies.
Yeah.
I definitely don't see the Braves making it again. I would say that would be one for sure I would drop off of there.
He just had Arizona win in the West.
Yeah. Come on. I do think the Giants have a bounce back season. I just think there's a lot of talent on that team, and just Mike just had a crazy season go against him. So I do think the Giants bounce back and make it in there. I mean, the Phillies still look really strong in the East there. Did you say the Dodgers made it last year?
They did not.
I think maybe you have the alternate there with the Dodgers and Cardinals. The Dodgers
as we've been doing the past couple seasons, fighting for that last spot. I kind of figured that was coming.
I just don't know that I believe, like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to sneak in anywhere on the East or the Nationals there. So I still think it's going to be a lot of the teams we really like from the West, and maybe there's 2 teams out of the East that make it in.
That's fair.
I feel like the Giants had a kind of 1992 Seattle Mariners kind of season where they undid all of their positive momentum, but in a roundabout way, it ended up working out really well for them because they drafted Alex Rodriguez. I feel like because they're going to have a really high draft pick, and they're going to be able to pick. They're not going to have their pick, but they're going to be able to pick one of the top guys, and that will turn into a future major contributor. So.
Yeah, and my one of my CCPs there, Jerry Rollins, as a starting pitcher, is going to be ready to go there pretty soon to join with Candela and Ronson.
Which is why they were okay with moving on from Hoxie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, they will have the 5th pick in this upcoming draft.
Ooh.
So last season, you gave a now hindsight has turned into a very incorrect prediction on YouTube.
Putting it lightly.
I think we all bought into the Cardinals, Jesus Christ, the Reds hype train.
Y'all didn't come on my hype train.
Well, we all bought into the Reds hype train. We were all left kind of holding the bag a little bit. Do you feel like like your roster is actually in a place where you're going to be competing for a playoff spot, or do you feel like a lot of the same problems are still there and you're going to end up in more or less a similar spot?
I definitely think I'm in a spot where the talent's there, like you compete for a wild card spot, mainly because of what my starting pitching looks like now heading into this season. Mm-hmm. Adding Mackenzie Gore, adding Jimmy Hernandez, Jimmy Potts should be a lot better this year.
The Jimmies.
Yeah, the Jimmies.
Jimmy.
Filling in that role. And then, Bauer and Munoz are kind of, okay guys for the 4th and 5th spots there, that are, kind of league average guys that, can give you quality innings. I think the biggest hurdle for me is just the bullpen is a lot of young arms that kind of are up and down. I was able to at least add Matt Festa there to be a kind of a veteran guy in there, but that bullpen could go a lot of different ways for me. So that's probably the part of my team that worries me the most from that standpoint.
Okay.
Cool. So in your day job, the Reds had some minor prospect come up just recently.
I don't know if you've heard of him.
The insiders know about him, but nobody else, right? Who's your LA De La Cruz in eMLB? Who's going to pop up for you this year and make the squad that no one is looking at right now?
This year, I mean, the wild card for me obviously is, Jamie's CCP, Jamie Thurman. He's got some boost to put into him. We're still trying to build him as a two-way player, starting pitcher, outfielder. So, that may make his development time a little bit longer. But he could be up, pretty quickly to kind of join with Trey Griffey there in the outfield. From a pitching standpoint, I really like Luis Maldonado as a starter, ground by guy with a really good arm who, could be somebody if, somebody gets hurt or if Bauer or Munoz really struggle, second half of the season, he could be up and maybe really give that rotation a jolt.
Nice young guy too.
Mm-hmm.
21.
Yeah, I got him in the Barrios trade. He came over. I think what I really liked about that trade in the end was that Maldonado and Hassel in particular, I think, have a pretty high floor, even if they don't really, fulfill all of their potential. I was able to use Salazar in the Gore trade, so that really helped me get Mackenzie Gore, and then Jamie CCP obviously could turn into a real superstar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. Well, any other last comments before we end this completely disorganized episode?
I just clicked over to the Discord and I just saw that people are still talking about the Oakland trade, so nice.
Cool.
I don't want to keep talking about it.
I don't either. I just looked over there and I went, huh, interesting.
I'll have to check it out.
I'm about to, so
Oh boy.
Nice.
it looks.
So if you're not in the Discord, please join it. Interesting stuff happens over there.
And post your comments here.
That's
And
right.
push
Post
that
your
like
comments.
button and
Yeah,
subscribe, damn it.
I mean, I'm not going to be.
Thank you for watching our
thing.
video, guys. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
And now we're cringe.
We are now cringe. Are we
well, I
ever
think
not?
We probably were.
I was
already.
getting ready to say I'm Hall of Fame quality. Clearance.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you guys all for tuning into this next episode of the Broadcast Buddies, Podcast Pals, all the names that we have given this crazy show that we do. We enjoy doing it. We hope you guys have enjoyed watching. And then until next time, take care, everybody.
Hope to see you out there on the next episode of Stereo Jimmy's.
Jimmy.
Jimmy!
So I think our lead topic tonight is how socialism has invaded eMLB, and we're all charging $34 a ticket, regardless of the quality of the product.
Yeah, did you check? Did you check your?
This leftist movement destroying America.
Hey, woke commish.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. You work for the Reds. You're a communist conspiracist too?
I work for the Redlegs.